بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أفرأيتم اللات والعزى ومناة الثالثة الأخرى ألكم الذكر وله الأنثى تلك إذن قسمة ضيزى. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Brothers, I'm sorry to trouble you one more time. One more call towards the front. One more, as close to the front as you can. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning the Satanic verses, otherwise known in the Arabic language as the discussion of the ayat al-shaytaniyah or usturat al-Gharaniq, is one of the most controversial discussions in Islamic thought. At the same time, is one of the most intriguing discussions within Islamic theology. A discussion which requires an in-depth examination, for it is a discussion which affects the lives of many millions of Muslims in the world today. A discussion from which many a lesson may be learnt and many a fantastic example may be derived. And a discussion with a historical basis and a contemporary significance. Contemporary in the idea that Salman Rushdie only recently has decided to publish his memoirs in relation and recollection of the period which he wrote the Satanic verses. Many of us who would have been alive at the time would have known the uproar that was caused by Rushdie's fourth novel. Rushdie, of course, had been known for his prolific writing before that, and it was typical work of him when he mixed this idea of fiction and non-fiction in a sort of magical realism. However, on this occasion, some of the most important religious figures were mentioned within his book, and therefore this caused outrage in many parts of the Islamic world. There being many riots, for example, in cities like Bradford, Birmingham, and at the same time there was a fatwa which was given by Ayatollah al-Khomeini in relation to the book. You find, however, that while many Muslims remember the book on a sour note, not many of them actually realize the basis or have an understanding of what exactly are the Satanic verses. As in, if you were to come and ask Muslims today, what are the Satanic verses? They'll reply to you, it's a book written by Rushdie. No, Rushdie wrote a book on the basis of an incident which he had studied from certain books in Islamic literature in his time at Cambridge. The incident relates to how Shaitan was supposedly able to inspire the Prophet Muhammad to praise the idols of Quraysh. Hence, this incident is known as Usturat al-Gharaniq. The idea is given that one day the Holy Prophet was reciting the verses of Surah An-Najm, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى أَلَكُمُ الذَّكَرُ وَلَهُ الْأُنْثَى. Then he supposedly praised the idols of Quraysh by saying, تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقَ الْعُلَى وَإِنَّ شَفَاعَتَهُنَّ لَتُرْجَى. Rushdie, when he wrote the Satanic verses, based it on this controversial incident, that this is seen as the incident when Satan was able to overtake the revelation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The title Satanic Verses, coined by the famous academic by the name of Muir, is the title of theological content, not just a title in literature. The title places a question mark on the prophethood of the Holy Prophet, because the title comes forward and asks the question, was Muhammad a man who was bewitched by Satan? Is Quran the word of God or the word of Satan? As in today, there are certain Christian evangelical preachers who until today use the Satanic verses. Those of you here who are involved in polemical discourse will know that amongst the attacks on the Holy Prophet are the Satanic verses. Why? Because they say in your works, the works of people like Tabari or the works of someone like Waqidi, the Satanic verses are there, that Muhammad one day was inspired by Satan, and therefore how do you know that the rest of his book is not Satan's work? Of course, if you were to answer on a trivial level, the trivial answer would be, I've never seen Satan inspire someone to write something that condemns him so much. As in the Quran, half of it is condemnation of shaitan. Why would shaitan inspire Rasulullah to write a book that condemns him so much? But still, the academics have many strong arguments in relation to these verses. These verses which they associate with the Holy Prophet. And it's vital that we understand the attacks from those who have attacked the Prophet on this issue. Why? Because when there are attacks on our Holy Prophet, Muslims are reactive, not proactive. When someone attacks our Prophet, we react. However, if you were to ask many of us to reply to the attack academically, you'll find many Muslims have no relationship with Rasulullah whatsoever. As in, there are many Muslims who until today, if you were to ask them to tell you the biography of the Holy Prophet, from the day he was born till the day he died, you'll find many of them turning around to you and saying, to tell you the truth, we don't even know how many years he was in Mecca and how many years he was in Medina. Therefore, there is a need for us to be able to defend our Prophet, especially against attacks such as these. And the defense will take place on a number of stages. Number one, what was the interaction between Satan and the prophets of God? And is Satan able to influence revelation? Number two, what exactly happened with Surah 53 of the Quran? And who is it that told the Prophet that Satan had inspired him to say some verses? Number three, how does Satan himself prove that there are certain creations of God even he cannot affect? Number four, how do the first verses of Surah 53 prove that Rasulullah, when it comes to revelation, no one can affect the revelation of his Lord? Number five, and of the utmost importance, was the word Gharaniq used in early Islamic literature to denote idols, or did it denote a completely different definition? Number six, what is the conception of infallibility in the schools of Islam? And how did Yazid ibn Muawiyah seek to destroy the relationship between revelation and infallibility? Let's look at this argument and dissect it in complete depth. When you look at the Satanic verses, the first issue that clearly arises is Satan's influence on mankind generally. We know very well that Satan is believed in not only within the religion of Islam, as if you study all the world religions which are monotheist, you'll find that they believe in Satan, and indeed with the whispers of Satan. In some religions, Satan is seen as being what? In some religions, Satan is seen as being an angel, a fallen angel. In other religions, Satan is seen as being what? A jinn. That's why in the religion of Islam, we believe that while he was in the company of the angels, he himself is a jinn. He was created from fire, And he was of those who used to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no ordinary worship. As in, me and you have worshipped Allah for 2, 3, 4 years. All of a sudden we class ourselves as mu'mineen. Or some of us class ourselves as muttaqeen. Shaitan only worshipped God for about 6,000 years. So he had worshipped a few more years than me and you all put together. But the problem with Satan's worship was what? There was a sense of arrogance, number one, and a sense of incomplete submission, number two. You see, sometimes in life, we love to say, oh Allah, don't let me be like Shaitan. Whereas in some cases, our behavior is similar to Shaitan. As in when Satan saw that the Lord ordered him to prostrate before Adam, what was his reply? He said, if you make me prostrate to you, I'll prostrate to you all day and all night. But I will never prostrate towards that which is made of clay, while I am made from fire. This line is a line of what? Not only a line of arrogance, a line of incomplete submission. Because what is Islam? Islam isn't that I pick and choose what of the religion I want to submit to. Muslims today are very interesting people. They submit to that which they are ready for. You've heard the phrase, I'm not ready yet? There are Muslims who will submit to the phrase, I'm ready for salah, I'll pray. I'm ready for fasting, I'll fast. But this area, I'm not ready yet. When I'm ready, I'll get back to you. What's the difference between your line and Shaitan's line? Shaitan, what was his line? As for prostrating to you, I'm ready. As for worshipping you, I'm ready. But as for Adam, this doesn't fit my criteria in this world. But I'll tell you one thing, when I'm ready to actually prostrate to Adam, I'll get back to you. Do you ever ask yourself the question, what's the difference between our attitude and our communities and Shaitan? As in today, when you have certain Muslims, you tell him, isn't it about time you prayed? You know, I'm not ready to pray yet, but I'm a good human being with a good heart. You know that heart? Everyone has a good heart, mashallah. Then you say to him, isn't it time that you fast? They say, for example, to you, I'm a good human being, but I'm not ready to fast. Isn't it time that you put on the veil? Isn't it obligatory upon you? I love Allah, but I'm not ready to put on the veil. Shaitan likewise was exactly the same. Shaitan was saying what? That I'll do anything for you. You want me to stay in prostration to you the whole time? I will. But as for prostrating to that which is made from clay, that is something I'll never do. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states very clearly, Aba wastakbara. A man of pride, a creation of pride, and a creation of what? Of arrogance. Therefore, Shaitan from that period and made it a point for himself that if he wasn't going to prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he would deceive the majority of the messages of God from coming towards the belief in Allah. You see, this was his mainstay, that any prophet of God, when he's got a message, my role is to ensure that I try and destroy his message. And if I can't do that, I try and destroy what? I try and destroy the people and the way they think. But does Shaitan actually make us sin? Because many times when we commit a sin, we love to blame Shaitan, don't we? As in when you see someone who's not religious, you say to them, excuse me, why aren't you religious? They reply back to you by saying that I'm not religious, and if I commit a sin, it's because of Shaitan. Shaitan himself in the Quran mentions a beautiful line. Don't blame me, blame yourselves. All I did was invite you. You accepted my invitation. Isn't that true? As in we accept his invitation, of course he whispers something beautiful for us, but it's up to us to accept the invitation. And you find that there isn't a prophet of God, but that Shaitan without a doubt tried to have an influence on the message of that prophet of God. You find, for example, if you research the lives of Prophet Ayyub alayhi salam, how much did Shaitan try and make the people not believe in Ayyub alayhi salam? And how much did Shaitan even tell Ayyub, I promise if you lost everything which God gave you, you won't even believe in God. Ayyub lost his family, Ayyub lost his children, Ayyub lost his land, Ayyub lost his health, but continuously kept on saying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Shaitan tried with Ayyub. Shaitan tried with every prophet. That's why in Surah 22, verse 52, the verse clearly states that whenever a prophet wants to perform that which is good, Shaitan tries to put a vanity in him. But then the verse says, فَيَنْسَخُ اللَّهُ مَا يُلْقِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Allah protects what shaitan tries to do. Allah protects the Prophet from what shaitan tries. Yes, if the verse says shaitan tries to influence and Allah doesn't help, then there's a possibility that shaitan actually has a bearing on the prophets. Whereas the verse says, فَيَنْسَخُ اللَّهُ مَا يُلْقِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Allah covers and protects the prophets from what shaitan tries to do. And that's why you found shaitan, he has conversations with prophets of God. He knows he can't affect the prophets of God, but he makes it clear to them, if I can't affect you, I'll affect your people. For example, one day shaitan meets Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. He says to him, you know, Nuh, you done me a great favor. Half of mankind was destroyed because of God's flood. So I want to do a favor to you by giving you some pieces of advice. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam asked him, what are the pieces of advice you want to give me? He said, tell your people to remember me in 3 situations. At this moment he looked at him. He said to him, which 3 situations? He said to him, the first situation is when your people are alone with the opposite gender. I'm the third of the 3. Isn't that true? As in, if I'm alone with someone who's not mahram to me, I don't care if I am God's gift for religion. If Yusuf can be affected by Zulaykha were it not for the mercy of his Lord, then who am I not to be affected? Isn't it? Shaitan says, know one thing. When you're alone with the opposite gender, I'll whisper, because what's his role? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ. Constant whispering. Get attracted, do something, doesn't matter. No one's watching, community's not watching, parents aren't watching. I'm sure you hear the whisperings. You can't at the end turn around and say it's you. No, it's you're the one who accepted his invite. Number 2, when you are angry, I make you more angry. Isn't that true? How many times, if you were to watch a video of us being angry, you'd say, what possessed me? Subhanallah, one particular jinn called shaitan, isn't it? As in, if you were to look at yourself angry, you'll turn around and you'll be like, what am I doing here? What's my behavior like? Number 3, when you're about to give charity, beware of me. That's when I try and influence you not to give charity. And sometimes you want to give charity towards a cause. All of a sudden, shaitan comes in different forms. Sometimes it comes in the form of your wife, the community. Sometimes it comes in the form, for example, of others who come and tell you, don't give any charity. We have enough bills as it is at home to pay. You therefore find that shaitan would tell these prophets very clearly that I will warn you from now that this is where I'm at my most effective. In other words, he meets Prophet Nuh, he meets Prophet Ayub. Can he affect them? No, he can't. Therefore, did he affect the Holy Prophet or no? This is a vital question. Because today many are still of the belief that shaitan affected Rasulullah with the revelation of chapter 53 of the Quran. Let me give you the context of how shaitan's meant to have affected him, in order that I can dissect it and destroy this whole myth. The idea is that the Rasulullah, when he was spreading his message in Mecca, many of these Quraysh were not coming towards Islam, especially their leaders, as in people like Walid and Al-As and Hakam and so on, were not coming towards his message. If they were to come towards his message, they tell him, listen, Muhammad, if you want us to come towards your message, we've got to agree a deal. He's like, what do you mean? They said, let's amalgamate our beliefs. You share our idols, and we'll believe in your religion. We have the idols, you share them, and we'll believe in what? We'll believe in your religion. The Holy Prophet replied to them with the surah which all of you have recited. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. Say to the disbelievers, I do not worship that which you worship, nor do you worship what I worship. You have your religion and I have mine. They tried their hardest to amalgamate. He wouldn't amalgamate. The narration states in relation to the Satanic verses that he was leaning on the Kaaba. While he was leaning on the Kaaba, the narration states that he was reciting the verses of Surah An-Najm. Please listen to this dissection carefully. He was reciting the verses of Surah An-Najm. while reciting the verse of Surah Al-Najm, he came to verse 19. أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى. Have you seen the idols, Allat and Uzza and Manat, the third? The Arabs used to have an idol for every day of the year. Do you agree? 360 idols for every day in the year. When they had this idol for every day in the year, the narrations mention what? The narrations mention that the three main idols the Arabs had were the ones which the surah mentions. Number one, Allat. What was the idol Allat? You know, these idols, they used to represent something. Every religion that worships idols may believe in one God, but their idols are an image of God on earth. Some people say, well, then why are they a problem? They all believe in one God. Shirk isn't putting partners to God. Shirk can also be making God into an image. There are different types of shirk, because many times people come up to me and say, I promise you, my friend from a certain religion, I promise they only worship one God. Yes, I know they only worship one God. You're teaching me something new? The reason they are mushrik is because they put God the Almighty into a form of an image, and that is not allowed. The first type of idol they have is Allat. Allat, what was it? They used to say that that's the female Allah. Allah is what? Allah. We don't have a male or female. But if you were to make it feminine, how would you pronounce it? Allat. So they said the female Allah is Allat, and they used to make this idol, the female Allah, they'd make the idol, and many of them would come and prostrate before this idol. Now this idol was ironically in the shape of a man who used to serve water to the pilgrims who used to come to Hajj in the days of Jahiliyyah. In the days of Jahiliyyah, the pilgrims would come to Hajj. This man would serve them water. So what did the people do? First, the people make a statue of that man. The problem when you begin to make statues is one day someone's gonna bow down to it. Isn't that true or no? That's why Islam says beware of these types of statues, because eventually you may find someone who's gonna bow down. The narrations, what do they mention? The narrations at this moment, they mention very clearly that Allat was the first idol. They used to make him a statue, then after making him a statue, they actually began to worship him. The second idol they used to worship, the Quran mentions, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى. Al-Uzza was a tree which they used to worship. This tree was between Mecca and Ta'if. And they used to decorate this tree with, you know, lots of decorations. They used to put lights on the tree. Some of them would come and hug the tree. Others would come and do sujood before the tree. You have to be careful of these things in life, isn't it? So you find that what happened was with Al-Uzza was that they came and they would come and hug this tree, and eventually they'd carve an idol. I remember on the day of Uhud, Abu Sufyan facing the army of Rasulullah calling out, we have Al-Uzza, we have Al-Uzza. Rasulullah replying, we have Allah, we don't need any other support. The irony of this world, that the man who raises Al-Uzza on the day of Uhud is called a Muslim at the end of his life. And the man who looks after Rasulullah all his life is called a Kafir. The irony of this history that we have. The second idol was Al-Uzza. The third idol, Manat. Manat was an idol which the tribes used to bow before between Mecca and Medina. Rasulullah is reciting the verses. While he's reciting the verses, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى. Have you seen Allat and Uzza? وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى. And Manat, the third of the idols. أَلَكُمُ الذَّكَرُ وَلَهُ الْأُنْثَى. All of a sudden these idols are all the females of Allah, and to you are the females and to us are the males. تِلْكَ إِذًا قِسْمَةٌ ضِيزَى. This division is an unfair division. At this moment, Shaitan is meant to have inspired him to say, تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقَ الْعُلَى وَإِنَّ شَفَاعَتَهُنَّ لَتُرْجَى. These are the highest idols, and it's their shafa'ah that I seek. As soon as he said this, supposedly, the Quraysh were amazed. Did you just hear what Muhammad said? What do you mean? Did you hear what he said? He said, تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقَ الْعُلَى. These idols are the Gharaniq, the lofty idols. And it's their intercession that we seek. The Quraysh started celebrating. Yes, Muhammad has now accepted our idols. Spread the news. And that supposedly, when the news was spread, it went as far as Africa. Because you know there were Muslims who had gone to Africa for the Hijrah. They went to Ethiopia because of the Christian priest who was there. The news reached those Muslims returned. When the Prophet Muhammad finished reciting, the news had spread everywhere. The Prophet Muhammad asked Jibreel, what happened? He said, oh Prophet of God, Shaitan inspired you. So what do you mean Shaitan inspired me? He said, you just recited the verse, تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقَ الْعُلَى وَإِنَّ شَفَاعَتَهُنَّ لَتُرْجَى. You just recited the verses that Shaitan has made you say the idols are the loftiest. But do not worry. So what do you mean do not worry? Said we recognize that Shaitan inspired you, so we've deleted these ayahs, these verses, so that they will not now be in the Quran. From this came the argument that Rasulullah was inspired by Shaitan. How do we reply to the satanic verses? How do we reply to this attack? Let's go through the reply one by one. The first reply to those who claim that Shaitan inspired the Prophet in the satanic verses is from Shaitan himself. And I say to Shaitan, thank you very much for the reply. What's his reply? Shaitan in the Quran says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah excommunicates him, he says to him something which is the most important line in infallibility in the Quran. Because I know many times people ask me the question, how is it that we say the prophets and the imams are ma'soom? How can we prove it? Shaitan. What do you mean Shaitan? Shaitan's the one who makes people sin. How can he prove asma for us? Shaitan's the biggest proof of infallibility. Because when Shaitan's excommunicated, he speaks to Allah. And you know the way he speaks to Allah is full of respect. He says, فَبِعِزَّتِكَ, by your majesty. When we talk to Allah, we're like, Allah, can you give me this? Shaitan says, no, you don't talk to him like that. You say, فَبِعِزَّتِكَ, by your glory and majesty. لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, I'll deceive all of them, all your creation. إِلَّا, except. Is there an exception? Are you, Shaitan, admitting there is a certain category of people even you can't deceive? He admits it. فَبِعِزَّتِكَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ, Surah 38, verse 82, most important verse on infallibility in the Quran. People don't appreciate it. فَبِعِزَّتِكَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. By your majesty, I'll deceive all of them, except your servants who are free from the need to sin. In Arabic, mukhlas and mukhlis are two completely different words. A mukhlis is a sincere human being. A mukhlas is someone who's been purified from the need to sin. They are not affected by envy or anger or lust or desire. As in, why is it that we sin? Either lust, envy, anger, greed or desire. A mukhlas is someone who even Shaitan says, Ya Allah, I'll deceive all of them, but not them. There's a chosen creation of yours I can't even deceive. Because their relationship with you is so strong, there is no way any of my whisperings will ever affect them. They are free from the need to be greedy, angry, full of lust, full of desire. Therefore, the first proof that Rasulullah would not be inspired by Shaitan is Shaitan himself. That Shaitan says, Ya Allah, there is a group of your creation free from the need to sin. And the better and closer they are to you, the less they're going to be affected by me. Tell me, is there any creation of Allah better and closer to him than Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Therefore, number one, Shaitan himself proves that he can't affect the Holy Prophet. Number two, and very importantly, what do we find? Number two, the beginning of Surah 53 of the Quran highlights very clearly that there is absolutely no way whatsoever the revelation of Allah can ever go wrong with Rasulullah. What does the beginning of the surah mention? You see, it's contradictory that if in the middle of the surah, shaitan affects him, but at the beginning of the surah, what does Allah begin Surah 53 with? Read with me. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. What does the verses of Surah An-Najm begin? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. By the star, and when it descends, your companion does not err, nor does he go astray, and he does not speak of his own will, but rather he speaks of revelations from his Lord. You tell me, Allah in the beginning of the surah is saying, my servant Muhammad never errs, nor does he ever go astray. And then what? 20 verses later, all of a sudden he started saying what shaitan's doing? Contradictory. Therefore, number two, the beginning of Surah An-Najm. Number three, the third proof, that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself makes clear, my revelation, no one can tamper with it because I am the protector of my revelation. Surah 15, verse number 9. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafidhun. We are the ones who send down the Quran, and verily we are its protectors. Isn't it? As in, who is it that's the protector of the Quran but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his holy book. You think he'd allow shaitan to affect the revelation of his holy book? Shaitan can affect me and you, but can never come near touching the holy book. Someone says what Surah 22 verse 52 says, when a prophet does something good, shaitan affects them. Yes. فَيَنْسَخُ اللَّهُ مَا يُلْقِي الشَّيْطَانِ. As soon as shaitan wants to do something, Allah acts as a protector against anything shaitan can do. Number 5, the verses which Rasulullah is meant to have recited say what? تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقَ الْعُلَى وَإِنَّ شَفَاعَتَهُنَّ لَتُرْجَى. What do the verses say? These are the Gharaniq which are high, and I want their intercession. Gharaniq is meant to mean what? It's meant to mean idols. I defy anyone in Arabic literature to find me that the word Gharaniq means idols. Because I have to prove that this is a later concoction. At the time of Rasulullah, study all the poetry surrounding Rasulullah's life. Because you know the words of the Quran, or the words he's meant to recite, the Arabs know their meaning, don't they? So when he says, تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقِ, Gharaniq doesn't mean idols in early Arabian society. What does Gharaniq mean? Gharaniq either means an aquatic bird or a young blonde boy, young blonde male. Therefore, if it means young blonde male or aquatic bird, what does that have to do with Allat and Uzza and Manat? As in, surely you could have used the word تِلْكَ الْتَمَاثِيل, تِلْكَ الْأَصْنَامِ. He could have used other words for idols. When you say that he said تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقِ, okay, Gharaniq, it means idols? No. Gharaniq means aquatic bird or a young male boy. That therefore shows that this usage of the word Gharaniq is a later concoction. Later, 300, 400, 500 years later, maybe, someone used the word Gharaniq for idols. But in early Islam, there was no such conception as the Gharaniq referring to idols. Number 6, when you look at the verses very clearly, you know what's interesting? This is what he says. Have you seen Allat, Uzza, Manat? You take the females and we take the males. This is an unfair division. Now listen. Then he says, these are the idols who we want to intercede for us. Then the Quran, when it continues, you know what the Quran says? ما هي إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. Please listen to this carefully. First, he's attacking idols. Then supposedly Satan's made him praise idols. Then he says, These are just idols who your fathers have given names to. They don't have any authority whatsoever. Please try and understand. If Rasulullah has just praised idols, and then all of a sudden he says, these are just names your dads gave idols, why would the Quraysh be happy? If Rasulullah had only praised idols, the Quraysh would be happy. As soon as supposedly shaitan inspired him to praise, the next verse in the Quran says, you know these idols, they're nothing. Allah's not giving them any power, and your dads are the ones who gave them names. I, as a Qurayshi, if I'm happy that Rasulullah is just praised, why would I all of a sudden be happy when he's just attacked the idols a minute after he's praised them? Of course, this requires us to have a much closer relationship with the Quran. But anyway, you would find that here once again, those who come and say that the Quraysh were supposedly happy, there is no way the Quraysh were happy. Then after that, point number 7, in the books of our Sunni brothers, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majah, there is no narration whatsoever about the satanic verses. If they have it in their books, they have it, for example, from narrations from Waqidi, from Tabari. But we have to be fair in any academic analysis. Scholars such as Fakhr al-Razi, Qurtubi have all come forward, and even Quds and Muhammad Qutb have come forward and clearly said that this satanic verses is a myth. It's got nothing to do with Sunni belief. However, I'm being fair here that in Sunni belief, the general statement is that it's not part of their belief, although it's in their books. But I don't just pick a belief from one or two books. I'm fair. I wait to see what the scholars say, then I make a statement. Shahab Ahmed at Harvard has written a book, The Satanic Verses. All of you should try and order it. You will see he analyzes the satanic verses in depth. Shahab Ahmed says the Shia do not have one narration in all of their books about the Prophet Muhammad being inspired by shaitan. This is vital. You know why it's vital? Let me explain to you very clearly why it's vital. Every year a booklet comes out. Shia believe this, Shia believe that, Shia believe this, Shia believe that, Shia believe in X, Shia believe in Y. Alhamdulillah, in my books, I don't have the audacity to bring any satanic element to the message of Rasulullah. Why don't you talk about yourself and say that in your books you have the audacity to come near saying Rasulullah was affected by shaitan? But even then I will be fair. I will say that your scholars have said that this is not real, and I as an academician will say, in order to keep the peace and the unity between Muslims, if the Muslim ulama are saying that that's not their belief, I respect. So why tell me I believe Ali ibn Abi Talib is God and I believe the Quran is different? Why are you taking from one or two books in history? Why don't you come and ask the ulama of the Shia? Because academic analysis isn't something which you are paid by a certain government to make. Academic analysis is to be fair. That you don't condemn a whole school of 300 million people for the beliefs in one or two books. Likewise here, there's not one Shia book which says Rasulullah was inspired by shaitan. And we are proud that none of our literature says Rasulullah was inspired by shaitan in any way whatsoever. And that's why you find very clearly in all of our textbook, all of our ulama, Ayatollah Nasir Makarim Shirazi, may Allah lengthen his life, clearly in Al-Amthal discusses the satanic verses. And he says, never would our imams ever say that Rasulullah, shaitan came one day and he was leaning on the Kaaba and he was tired, because you know what the argument is, that he was really tired of his message. So he said, you know what, let me just praise their idols so they all come towards Islam. Rasulullah is tired of the message. Rasulullah doesn't sleep in the night, so the message remains alive. Rasulullah, Allah tells him in the Quran, don't go so far. Try and remain calm, remain peaceful. I know that it hurts you that they don't come towards the religion. Yet you find that we will never ever bring any concept like this against the reaches or the belief or the character of Rasulullah, because Rasulullah is above such insults like the satanic verses. And that's why the question arises, what are the different views on infallibility in the religion of Islam? Because this satanic verses has exposed the question, Does every Muslim believe Rasulullah is ma'soom or no? It's a vital question. It's a vital question because if you say he's not, then if those who come after him make mistakes, they say, well, Muhammad made mistakes. Let's look at the opinions of the schools on Islam on infallibility. One school of Islam believes, outside of the school of Ahlul Bayt, that Rasulullah can commit minor sins but not major sins. What do they mean? They say the major sins like adultery, for example, like shirk, like lying, Rasulullah would never perform. But there are small sins he can perform regularly. That there is no problem with whatsoever. That's one school in Islam. Then you have another school in Islam. What's their opinion? They come forward and state that this is the school of Ibn Taymiyyah. You know, Ibn Taymiyyah in certain schools of Islam is called Shaykh al-Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah, you know, on the Satanic verses, he believes in the Satanic verses. He says that yes, there may be 30 hadiths which are weak, which talk of the Satanic verses, and there may be mursal hadiths which are disconnected. But if you have a lot of mursal hadiths, you can still take the narration. So someone said to him, but Ibn Taymiyyah, are you saying that Rasulullah can be inspired by shaitan? He said, yes. They said to him, why? He said, because it shows whatever Rasulullah hears, he tells us. Whatever Rasulullah hears, he tells us. If he hears from shaitan, he tells us. And if he hears from Allah, he tells us. Then how do I know which of this religion is from shaitan and which is from Allah? It's a problem. Ibn Taymiyyah, in his opinion on the Satanic verses, he says that there are some things from shaitan, some things from Allah. So they asked him, what's your opinion on the Prophet's asma? Is the Prophet ma'soom or no? Ibn Taymiyyah replied by saying, the Prophet Muhammad commits sins, but not continuously. What's the difference between us and the Prophet Muhammad then? Do we commit sins continuously? No. There are some people in this world who don't commit sins continuously. He says the Prophet Muhammad is a normal man. He commits sins, but not continuously. You know, to make you happy about your Prophet. Not continuously. You therefore find that's the second opinion. The third opinion is the opinion of the school of Ahlul Bayt. We believe that Rasulullah is immune from all sin and all error, be it in revelation or be it in his daily life. That the Holy Prophet, when Allah says to us in the Quran, obey Allah and obey the Prophet, can we obey someone who is a sinner? Because if I start obeying someone who's a sinner, then I don't know what is right and what's wrong from what he's giving me. And if he commits a sin and I have to obey him, then I'm obeying in an area where then I can face Allah and say, Ya Allah, you told me to obey the Prophet Muhammad. He committed the sin, I want to commit it as well. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, what do we say? We say prophets of Allah will never commit a sin. Prophets of Allah are immune from all type of error and all type of sin. Someone turns around and says, hold on a minute, that means the prophets of Allah and the imams are robots. Say, what do you mean? Say, I can't take this man then as my role model. Say, why? Say, because if he can't sin, that means why should I take him as a role model? That means he's a robot walking on the earth. We believe prophets of Allah can sin, but they wouldn't sin. I can go to an area which is known as being an area of sin, but I wouldn't. I can drink alcohol. I've got the capability to pick up a glass of alcohol and drink it, but I wouldn't. I can smoke something which is haram. I've got the hands to do it and the mind to know where to buy it, but I wouldn't. There's a difference between what you can and what you would do. Prophets of God can sin because they have the same makeup as me and you, but they wouldn't. What do I mean? Someone came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. And he said to him that we can't take you Ahlul Bayt as our role models. He said to him, why? Because this is a common problem in our communities. When you tell someone, why don't you be like Imam Ali? But he's an Imam. Why aren't you acting like Fatima Zahra? But she's a Ma'soom. So someone came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin and said to him, we can't follow you. He said, why? He said, because you people, you can't sin. So why should I take you as my role model? Imam said, it's not that we can't sin, it's that we wouldn't. He said to him, what do you mean? He said, if I asked you to walk on the street naked, can you? He said, yes. He said, would you? He said, no. He said, why? He said, because of the respect I have for my society surrounding me. He said, likewise with us, we can sin, but we wouldn't out of the respect for the Lord that watches us. True. I can. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I can sin, but I wouldn't. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, what is infallibility? Not that they can't sin. They can. They are created like me and you, but they wouldn't because number one, their respect for their Lord. Number two, the cognizance of the consequences of sin is more higher than me and you. Therefore, you found that this issue of the satanic verses, clearly in the school of Ahlul Bayt, was seen as a myth. That revelation could never be tampered with. But then only 50 years after Rasulullah died, on the pulpits in Sham sat an emperor who mocked Rasulullah's revelation and his infallibility. Because you know Yazid, when he sat in his court in Sham and he looked at Zainab sitting in front of him, he looked at her and he recited the most audacious verses of poetry which highlighted his disbelief. Yazid ibn Muawiyah had no belief in Allah or his Prophet, and he showed it in the most audacious poetry. ليت أشياخي ببدري شهدوا جزع الخزرج من وقع الأسل لا أهلوا واستهلوا فرحا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشل لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. What was he saying? He was saying, I wish my ancestors at Badr were present here today so that they could see what I've done. His ancestors at Badr, who are they? Abu Sufyan and all of these. Do they believe in Allah or no? No. He's saying, I wish my ancestors at Badr were present in Sham in front of Zainab today so that they could see what I've done. Then he says, لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. Hashim, Bani Hashim, played with the kingdom. There was no revelation and there was no truth. In other words, Yazid, 50 years after Rasulullah died, had already begun a campaign to destroy the idea that revelation from Allah came to Rasulullah. And that's why when Imam al-Husayn left Mecca and Medina, when he arose from Mecca and Medina, the reason he arose from Mecca and Medina was because he not only wanted to reform the society, he wanted to return to the seerah of his grandfather Rasulullah. He wanted to protect the message of Rasulullah. He didn't want anyone to attack his grandfather in the way Yazid was attacking his grandfather. And that's why when he set off from Mecca to Medina, what did he say? When he set off from Mecca, when he set off from Medina towards Karbala, he said, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجُ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي رسول الله أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر وأسير بسيرة جدي وأبي علي بن أبي طالب. What did he say? He said, I have not come out for fame, nor for corruption, nor for power. I've come out to what? For the reform of the ummah of my grandfather Rasulullah. I want to follow his footsteps and the footsteps of my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that's why when he had to leave Medina, the narrations mention that when he had to leave Medina, it became extremely difficult for him. Because he had to leave the beloved ones of Al Muhammad, those ones who looked after the message of the religion of Islam right from its conception. Therefore, right at the beginning, when he was leaving Medina, when he left Medina, the narrations mentioned to us that he wanted to bid farewell to those who were closest to his heart. I see the tears are beginning to flow already, for you all have a connection to Medina. All of you who've been to Jannat al-Baqi', you've seen those 4 graves alone in Jannat al-Baqi'. All of you who've been to the grave of Rasulullah, all of you have been there, you've seen that grave. But I ask each one of you, where is the grave of Fatima al-Zahra? Where is that holy grave in Medina? Imam al-Husayn knew he had to bid farewell to Medina. He had to bid farewell to Mecca as well. So the narrations mention to us that he had to bid farewell firstly to Fatima al-Sughra. His daughter Fatima Sughra, when he wanted to bid farewell to her, he called over Sayyidah Zainab. He said to her, Zainab, I don't have the strength to bid farewell to her. She said to him, why? He said, whenever I look at her face, she reminds me of my mother Fatima Zahra. I do not have the strength to go towards her. He bid her farewell. She asked him one thing. She said, Father, I beg you one thing. He said to her, what is it? She said, look after the 6-month-old baby. My father, don't let anything happen to the 6-month-old baby. And then she looked, she said, my uncle Abbas, my father, look after Abbas, look after Ali al-Akbar. I say to her, Sughra, I wish you came to Karbala and you saw Abbas on one side, Akbar on the other, and you saw Abu Abdullah with shimmer on his chest. He bid farewell to Fatima Sughra, then he went towards the grave of his mother Fatima Zahra. Ya Abu Abdullah, we wish we knew where your mother's grave is. MashaAllah, every lover of Fatima, tonight is your night. Fatima is in our majalis. He went towards the grave of his mother Fatima Zahra. He knew these were his final days. He began to cry by the grave of his mother. And he remembered those days when his mother was killed, when his mother died. He remembered what happened. That's why he remembered when he even came and hugged the chest of his mother in her janazah. Abu Dhar narrates that I saw Husayn hugging the janazah of his mother on her chest. As soon as I saw him hugging the chest, I saw Ali ibn Abi Talib come and remove him because he was crying. I said to Ali, Ali, why are you removing Husayn from the chest of his mother Fatima? He said, because the angels cannot bear to see Husayn on the chest of his mother. I ask you, if the angels couldn't bear to see Husayn on the chest of his mother, how did the angels bear to see shimmer on the chest of Husayn? He bid farewell to his mother Fatima Zahra. Then he went to the grave of his father, grandfather Rasulullah. He began to cry by the grave, but in his dream he saw his grandfather telling him, Husayn, your place in Jannah is next to me, but Allah wants to see you die as a martyr. Then the final place he went to visit is one of the saddest places. He went to his grandmother Salama. He went and he entered upon his grandmother, the wife of Rasulullah. She said to him, where are you heading? He said, I'm heading towards the land of Kufa. She said to him, Husayn, do not go, I beg you. He said, no, my grandmother, I have to go towards that land. She began to cry and cry. He then said to her, grandmother, do you want me to show you a glimpse of what I will face in the land that I'm heading towards? It's as if Allah gave him the ability to show her what would happen at Karbala. She said to him, yes, I beg you, show me a glimpse of what will happen. He said to her, my grandmother, look towards the front, what do you see? She said to him, Abu Abdullah, I see children running around without any water for them. He said to her, grandmother, look again, what do you see? She said to him, I see your knees on the ground and I see blood surrounding you. He said to her one final time, grandmother, what do you see? She said to him, Abu Abdullah, I see your son Akbar with a dagger in his chest. I see you sitting by his side trying to remove it. May Allah bless your holy tears. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and Al Muhammad, to allow us to follow the message of Imam Al-Husayn alayhi salam, and to allow us to remove the myths from the biography of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the following dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma anna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin karima. Raise your hands. Tu'izzu biha al-Islam wa ahla, wa tudhillu biha al-nifaq wa ahla, wa taj'aluna fiha min ad-du'ati ila ta'atik wal qadati ila sabilik, وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملنا وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of your salawat.